Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. Day 236 of the war in Gaza, and for the first time since the start of the war, IDF tanks are operating in central Rafah. This as the IDF announced that 3 soldiers were killed and 7 others wounded in multiple incidents throughout the Strip. Meanwhile, the army presented preliminary findings on Sunday night's targeting of Hamas operatives and civilian casualties nearby. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has the report.
Several tanks were seen stationed close to the central mosque inside Rafah. The IDF announced an additional brigade had joined the ones already fighting in Rafah. 4 IDF brigades are now operating in the Rafah area. The 401st and Nachal brigades are operating on the Philadelphia corridor against terror targets and infrastructure. About 3/4 of the 14-kilometer-long border corridor are under IDF control. About 30 to 40% of Rafah is now under IDF control, and about 60 to 70% of Rafah has been completely evacuated. Meanwhile, IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari presented preliminary findings on Sunday night's targeting of Hamas operatives and the fire that resulted in the deaths of dozens of Palestinian civilians sheltering in the vicinity. The targeted strike was 1.7 kilometers from the humanitarian area and used precise munitions to eliminate 2 senior Hamas terrorists. The army believes that a small warhead may have ignited Hamas munitions stored in the targeted building.
The strike was conducted using 2 munitions with small warheads suited for this targeted strike. We're talking about munition with 17 kilos of explosive material. This is the smallest munition that our jets can use. Following this strike, a large fire ignited for reasons that are still being investigated. Our munition alone could not have ignited a fire of this size. I want to repeat it. Our munition alone could not have ignited a fire of this size. Our investigation seeks to determine what may have caused such a large fire to ignite. We are looking into all possibilities, including the option that weapons stored in a compound next to our target, which we did not know of, may have ignited as a result of the strike.
For the first time in 4 months, rocket attacks struck central Israel. Hamas launched a long-range barrage of rockets from Rafah that reached all the way to Tel Aviv and Herzliya. Children, parents, and the elderly ran to shelters to protect themselves. ILTV's Rachel Safdie is at one of these bomb shelters in Tel Aviv with more. Rachel, what can you tell us about this rocket attack?
Hi, Emily. Well, I'm here in Tel Aviv. Behind me is a school, and in front of me is a recreational center. And yesterday, the children, the students, the staff in this school and in certain areas in central Israel had to run for shelters. Hamas launched a long-range rocket barrage onto central Israel in an attempt to surprise both the citizens of central Israel and the Iron Dome, as we had not seen sirens sound off in central Israel in around 4 months. Now, that's not the reality in the south and the north of the country. In the south, we see constant barrages. The citizens of the south of Israel are used to running to shelters. And in the north, just yesterday, we saw a barrage by the terror group Hezbollah that even injured a man in Kiryat Shmona, lightly injured.
And was there any damage or injuries?
Right. Well, the Iron Dome did intercept 3 of the rockets launched, but we still did see some damage and some light injuries. We saw a house hit in Herzliya and quite damaged. We also saw a small crater created in Kfar Saba due to one of the rockets. Now, it's important to note that we would be seeing a lot more injuries and even casualties possibly if Israel hadn't invested so much in the safety of their civilians. We see bomb shelters in every house, building, schools. You know, we see the very huge investment in the Iron Dome, and that differs from the leadership in Gaza. Hamas actually uses their civilians for their own safety. They operate from schools, from mosques, from residential areas, and that just goes to show the difference in leadership here, and that's why we don't see as many injuries here in Israel.
And on Israel's northern front, over the weekend, about 20 rockets were launched by Hezbollah at the Upper Galilee with direct hits in the northern border communities of Dovev and Manara. Israel struck back, hitting Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and in Syria. More from ILTV's William Sharon.
Most of the Hezbollah rockets fired over the weekend fell harmlessly, but there were direct strikes in Dovev and Manara. One of their targets hit their synagogue in Dovev. There were no injuries reported. Both of the communities in Dovev and Manara have been evacuated since the start of the cross-border exchange after October 7th. Israeli fighter jets struck back, hitting attacked Hezbollah sites and targets in South Lebanon and Syria. Jets carried out a wave of airstrikes against Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, targeting buildings used by the terror group and other infrastructures in the area. IDF also carried out artillery shelling at a number of other locations in South Lebanon. Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria since the outbreak of the civil war in its northern neighborhood, mainly targeting army positions and Iran-backed fighters, including from Hezbollah. So far, the skirmishes on the border have resulted in 10 civilian deaths on the Israeli side, as well as the deaths of 14 IDF soldiers and reservists. Hezbollah has named 313 members who have been killed by Israel during the ongoing skirmishes, mostly in Lebanon, but some also in Syria.
Former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley was in Israel to show her support for Israel in its war against Hamas. ILTV's Lidar Grave-Lazi met with the leading U.S. politician as she visited Nir Oz and other communities impacted by the massacre.
Hi, Emily. I'm here in Kibbutz Nir Oz, one of the hardest hit kibbutzim on October 7th. And today, member of Knesset Dani Danon is hosting former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, on a solidarity mission as she's here in Israel. She's touring the sites of the October 7th massacre, including the kibbutz, the Nova Music Festival site, and the police station in Sderot.
I told her the horrible torture that Hamas did, the 7th of October, murdered, killed is a light word, it's a murder, kidnapped. We had 80 kidnapped people, 30 murdered, the 7th of October. They burned the houses, about 80% of our houses look like this, need to be rebuilt. And I told her that I need her help for a ceasefire, and I need her help to bring home all the hostages and all our family members, and also Oded Lifshitz, which is my father-in-law, that he was a big peace fighter. And I also told her that the whole world needs to help to build up Gaza again, and not just give the money. All the world have to be a representative from all over the world to build it up, and this whole area should live in peace and happiness after all the hostages are back and there will be a ceasefire in Gaza.
After touring the kibbutz, she continued to the site of the Nova Music Festival massacre, where she heard directly from one of the survivors.
Remember when this happened, I said, finish them. They need to finish Hamas. Don't stop until they finish. But also make sure that that security is intact so that it never happens again from Hamas or anybody else. And so I will always push America to do what I think is the right thing, which is you stand by your friends and you don't waver on that.
Indeed, Nikki Haley touted her great friendship with Israel and with Dani Danon, forged during their days working side by side at the United Nations.
Dani, why was it important for you to bring Nikki Haley to Israel and to the sites of the October 7th massacre?
So I invited Ambassador Haley to come right after the massacre, but she was in the middle of the campaign, and she told me once she finished the campaign she will come, and I'm very happy that she did it. She's standing with Israel, supporting us at the international arena, and what we heard today, we heard voices of moral clarity, basically telling us, finish the job. Don't listen to anyone. Do what is good for Israel. We have to do that. We have to go all the way, finish Hamas, and make sure we bring back the hostages. If there are ministers who want us to stop the war, they shouldn't stay in the government. This government must finish the job.
Regarding the United Nations and the world courts, Nikki Haley did not hold back.
And for all those countries who decided to recognize a Palestinian state, do you know what that felt like here in Israel? You just gave credit to Hamas and all that they did. For all those looking at the ICC and ICJ, right before we landed, there were strikes in Tel Aviv. Why? Because the ICC and ICJ just emboldened Hamas. They just gave them everything they needed to know. And when the friends of Israel back off, the terrorists move in.
She also slammed Iran, Russia, and China for their complicity in the October 7th massacre.
It was orchestrated by Iran. It was helped with Russian intelligence. And it was fueled by money from China. Don't deny that. China's been funding Iran the entire time. Russia's intelligence helped them know where everything was. Iran helped get them trained. So this isn't Hamas. Look at these. These are all murderers and accomplices.
Nikki Haley will continue her trip tomorrow, visiting the northern border and the threat by Hezbollah. And moving on, our final story for tonight. A new study released by the Monitoring Peace and Cultural Tolerance in School Education, or IMPACT SE, has found that Saudi Arabia is changing its views on Israel, at least in school curricula. A review of the textbooks found they are toning down their anti-Israel rhetoric and even teaching that Israel has a place in the Middle East. Joining us now with more on this latest report is Marcus Sheff, CEO of IMPACT SE. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, pleasure.
So what can you tell us about the findings of this latest report?
Well, IMPACT SE, the Institute for Monitoring Peace and Cultural Tolerance in School Education, analyzes textbooks across the whole region, across the Middle East and North Africa region. We've been looking at the Saudi Arabian textbooks for really a couple of decades now. And recently, there have been, I think it's fair to say, really positive changes in the textbooks. You know, textbooks are uniquely authoritative, as we all know, but particularly in the Middle East when you tend to get one book, one grade, one subject. And it's incredibly important that children get accurate information, information which reflects reality and which allows them to be prepared for the modern world. And this is, I think, what we are seeing in Saudi Arabia, where they have made really important decisions in relation to what the Saudi Arabian society will look like in the future. Of course, that Vision 2030. And within that, it is important that information is, as I say, accurate, that things are not mislabeled. And really critically important has been the eradication of anti-Semitism. There is now practically no anti-Semitism whatsoever in the Saudi Arabian curriculum. Extraordinarily important, as I think we would all agree.
So room maybe for a bit of optimism. I mean, is Saudi Arabia perhaps laying the groundwork for the normalization with Israel?
Well, we look at textbooks and we understand through the curriculum those values, those identities which the state wishes to pass down to the next generation. So when we look at the Saudi Arabian curriculum, what we are looking at is a curriculum which wants to be open to the modern world, which wants to be open to other countries in the region. And, you know, I think one can certainly predict society through textbooks. One cannot predict politics.
So exactly. So let's take sort of this Saudi model. I mean, this is an incredible change from the radical Islamic ideology, sort of this hatred of Jews, hatred of Israel that we've traditionally seen across the Middle East. You know, maybe this gives us hope that through education, through de-radicalization, there can be peace. This is something that can perhaps be transitioned to looking at the Palestinians, looking at Gaza, looking at the West Bank. I mean, it's just a matter of making a policy decision.
Well, yeah, you know, absolutely. I think that is entirely accurate. And again, you know, I would stress that when children in school are given information which is accurate, when inaccurate or even insightful information has been removed from textbooks, that allows for that possibility of peace, of normalization, of good relations between any set of nations to happen. It is a sine qua non. It is absolutely essential. Frankly, it is impossible for nations to make real peace with each other when school education is geared towards hatred, is geared towards the delegitimization of other countries or of other peoples.
Marcus Sheff, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Started a day after the start of the war, the Smiles for the Kids organization has been a beacon of light for children and families most impacted by the war.
In the midst of conflict, there are glimmers of hope. Smiles for the Kids stands as a beacon of light for the children and families affected by the Swords of Iron War in Israel. Their mission is clear: to bring joy, resilience, and a sense of normalcy to those who need it most. From therapeutic biking programs for displaced youth to art workshops and musical empowerment events, they create spaces where children can express themselves, heal, and thrive. Their carnivals and pizza parties bring moments of joy and laughter to families facing unimaginable challenges, offering them a chance to escape the hardships of displacement, even if just for a while.
We're taking the fun activities that are usually meant for regular birthday parties and we're bringing it to traumatized communities and soldiers and army families who really need it.
For the brave soldiers on the front lines, they provide barbecues and deliver Shabbat meals, showing their deep gratitude and support for the soldiers' sacrifices. The impact of their work is profound. Physical activity through biking builds resilience. Art and music offer solace and self-expression. Every smile brought to a child's face, every moment of relief offered to a family is a step towards healing.
The best part is to see the kids and the soldiers smile and just have fun.
But they can't do it alone, and they need your help to continue their mission. Your donations can make a world of difference, turning tears into smiles and despair into hope. Join Smile for Kids and brighten a child's life. Because even in the darkest times, a little joy can go a long way.
Thank you! And now for a bit of positive news. Next week, Israel will mark Jerusalem Day, and a small group of children will celebrate in a very special way by traveling to the Israeli capital to pray at the Western Wall for the hostages held in Gaza and for the soldiers fighting in Israel's war fronts. It's an initiative of Yad Ezra Shulamit, an organization which provides hundreds of children a hot meal every day. And now these children are asking you, ILTV viewers, to send your prayers for the occasion. You can do so by scanning the QR code on the screen below. And joining us now with more on this heartwarming initiative is Yad Ezra Shulamit's public advocate, best-selling kosher cookbook author, celebrity chef, television producer, and businesswoman, Jamie Geller. Thank you for joining us today. So first, if you would, what is the text of the special prayer?
Crystal, thank you so much for having me again and for being such an incredible partner to Yad Ezra Shulamit. We are going to be going to Jerusalem to recite the Shema. So the text of the prayer, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. It's the proclamation of the oneness of God and that God is everywhere, in our happiest of times and in our darkest of times and everywhere in between. This special prayer encapsulates the life of a Jew. It is the first thing we say in the morning. We say the prayer in the morning when we wake up. We say it in the evening before we go to sleep. It is the first thing we teach our children when they are born. And it is the last prayer on our lips before we die. Everyone should live a long and happy life. But it is a proclamation of the oneness and greatness of God, and that we believe in Him and His plan for all of us.
And what is the power of the kids' prayer?
There is nothing like their pure souls praying, as we said, for the return of our hostages, for the success and safety of our soldiers, and for you. We are asking everyone, please, everyone has been such a partner in feeding these hungry children and feeding the orphans and the Yad Ezra Shulamit Children's Centers. And we are asking everyone to submit a prayer for yourself. I'm sure there will be a link here so that they can submit it, because the power of children's prayers are unmatched. And even more so, there is a power to the collective prayer. When we all come together, we will be live on June 4th on Tuesday around 6 p.m. You can follow, we'll be catching it on ILTV. We'll be also on my Facebook, on my Jamie Geller Facebook page. Me and together with the children, we will print all of the prayers that you send in, and we will separate them so that we can say all of the prayers for you, in addition, of course, to our hostages and soldiers.
And so you're saying that our viewers are invited to send in prayer requests?
Yes, we are so thankful. The viewers of ILTV have been so supportive of the children, of the needy, and of feeding the hungry children, as I said, and orphans here in Israel. This is our show of appreciation, and you are invited to please submit your prayer requests, and the children and I will say those prayers at the Western Wall on Jerusalem Day.
And not only prayer requests, I mean, what can our viewers do to help the prayers of the children actually be realized?
Well, first of all, you can join us in prayer. There is a power to the collective prayer when we all gather together and united. So that is very critical and crucial that you join and pray with us. And of course, you can continue to support the children. The holiday of Shavuot is coming up. You can feed an orphan with a food basket for the holiday. There are thousands of orphans. Please, please help and continue to support the children. You've always done it, and we count on you for your continued support.
So, Jamie, next week is Jerusalem Day. Will you be back to tell us about how it went?
Yes, and not only will we show you the prayer, in case you missed it live, we hope that in addition to sending in your prayer requests, when your prayers are answered, you share the joy and celebration with us. So we hope for this back and forth communication so that we can help each other, pray for each other, and celebrate the success of our prayers being answered.
Jamie Geller, thank you again for joining us, and the entire ILTV team sends our prayers as well. Thank you. And if you want to send your prayers, remember to scan the QR code on the screen now. For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. Stay safe and see you next week.